Have you ever watched your own family celebrate because your life fell apart? I have. The day I lost my six-figure job. I drove home thinking my family would support me. Instead, I walked into my own funeral. Not the kind with flowers. The kind where people bury your dignity while you're still alive. Have you ever watched your own family celebrate because your life fell apart? I have. The day I lost my six-figure job. I drove home thinking my family would support me. Instead, I walked into my own funeral. Not the kind with flowers. The kind where people bury your dignity while you're still alive. Have you ever watched your own family celebrate because your life fell apart? I have. The day I lost my six-figure job. I drove home thinking my family would support me. Instead, I walked into my own funeral. Not the kind with flowers. The kind where people bury your dignity while you're still alive. Have you ever watched your own family celebrate because your life fell apart? I have. The day I lost my six-figure job. I drove home thinking my family would support me. Instead, I walked into my own funeral. Not the kind with flowers. The kind where people bury your dignity while you're still alive. My younger brother raised a glass and laughed. Looks like mom's favorite loser is finally broke. My mother didn't defend me. She stood up, walked to the front door, opened it, and pointed outside. Pack your things. You're not living under this roof another night. My father didn't say a single word. He picked up my suitcase, dropped it on the driveway, and locked the door behind me. I stood there, with one backpack. No job. No home. No family, then. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. That would have been the biggest mistake of my life. The man on the other end said only one sentence. Mr. Carter, congratulations. You're now the legal owner of assets worth $18.7 million. I looked back at the house, where my family was celebrating my failure. They had no idea. They had just thrown a millionaire out onto the street. I used to believe hard work guaranteed security. For nearly 8 years, I worked as a senior financial analyst at one of Chicago's largest logistics companies. I rarely took vacations. I worked weekends. I missed birthdays. I even skipped holidays just to finish projects before deadlines. My boss used to tell everyone, if you want something done right, give it to Ethan. I believed I was building a future. I had no idea my future would disappear in less than 10 minutes. It was a rainy Tuesday morning when the email arrived. Mandatory meeting, 9 a.m. Everyone already knew what it meant. Layoffs. The conference room was silent. No one touched the coffee. No one looked at each other. When the CEO walked in, he didn't waste time. The company is restructuring. Today, nearly 200 positions will be eliminated. My heart started racing. I kept telling myself, you've been here 8 years. You're safe. Then HR called my name. Ethan Carter. Everything after that became a blur. A folder. A handshake. A cardboard box. Just like that, 8 years of loyalty fit into one box. As I walked through the parking lot, it wasn't losing the paycheck that hurt. It was realizing the company replaced me in less than 5 minutes. I sat in my car for nearly half an hour before driving home. Mom will understand. Dad will tell me it'll be okay. We'll figure this out together. I couldn't have been more wrong. When I opened the front door, I immediately heard laughter coming from the dining room. My brother Ryan was showing everyone pictures of the new sports car he wanted to buy. No one noticed me until Mom asked, "Why are you home so early?" I placed the cardboard box on the kitchen counter. I lost my job. The room went completely silent, The room went completely silent. My mother looked at me, then at the cardboard box in my hands. Instead of asking if I was okay, she sighed. So, it finally happened. I frowned. What do you mean? She folded her arms. I told your father this company would replace you one day. You should have listened to your brother and started your own business. Ryan leaned back in his chair and laughed. No company wants a guy who's scared to take risks. The words stung. Not because they were true. Because they came from my own family. Dad slowly put down his coffee. For a second, I thought he was going to defend me. Instead, he asked, "How much severance did they give you?" 3 months. He nodded. So after that, how are you planning to pay rent? I stared at him. Rent? He looked me straight in the eyes. You've been paying below market value for years. We can't keep carrying you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I lost my job this morning. And you're already talking about money? Mom answered before Dad could. Life doesn't stop because you're unemployed. Ryan smirked. I've got an idea. He pulled out his phone. Let's make this official. Before I could react, he started recording. Hey, everyone. This is my big brother. The genius of the family. 8 years at one company. And now he's unemployed. He laughed. Guess hard work doesn't always pay off. I reached for the phone. Turn it off. He stepped back. What? Embarrassed? The room filled with awkward silence. No one stopped him. Not Mom. Not Dad. No one. I quietly walked upstairs. Every step felt heavier than the last. This had been my home for almost 10 years. The room still had old family photos. My college diploma. Books I bought with my first paycheck. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything. Then, there was a knock. Dad entered. 4-1. Brief moment. I thought he had come to apologize. Instead, he handed me a black trash bag. You should start packing. I stared at him. What? You heard your mother. We think it's time you figure life out on your own. My chest tightened. So you're kicking me out? He couldn't even look me in the eyes. I think it's best. An hour later, everything I owned fit into 2 suitcases. Mom stood near the front door. She didn't cry. She didn't hug me. She simply handed me my spare house key. Leave it. I placed it in her hand. Ryan stood in the driveway, still smiling. Good luck finding a couch to sleep on. I looked at him. Didn't argue. Didn't yell. I just picked up my bags and walked toward my old car. As I started the engine, the front door slammed shut behind me. At that moment, I realized something. I hadn't lost my family that day. I'd simply discovered I never really had one. I drove aimlessly through Chicago for nearly an hour. Rain hit the windshield. My phone stayed silent. No calls. No messages. Not even one friend asking if I was okay. Finally, I pulled into an empty parking lot overlooking Lake Michigan. I turned off the engine, rested my head against the steering wheel, and whispered, "What am I supposed to do now?" Almost immediately, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. A calm professional voice said, "Mr. Ethan Carter?" "Yes. This is Morgan and Black Attorneys. We've been trying to reach you for 3 weeks." My heart skipped. I think you've got the wrong person. The man replied. No, sir, we've finally located the sole beneficiary of the Carter Legacy Trust. I frowned. What trust? There was a brief pause. Then he said 7 words that changed my life forever. Your grandfather left everything to you. I gripped the phone so tightly my hands started shaking. Before I could ask another question, the attorney added, Mr. Carter, the total value of the estate has now exceeded $18.7 million. I couldn't speak. My hand tightened around the phone. $18.7 million? There was a brief silence. Then the attorney answered calmly. Yes, Mr. Carter. Your grandfather, William Carter, established a private family trust 23 years ago. I frowned. My grandfather died when I was 14. Why am I only hearing about this now? The attorney sighed. Because the trust had one condition. It couldn't be released until you turned 30. Or until you experienced what your grandfather called true independence. I stared through the rain-covered windshield. What does that mean? It means you wanted to know whether people loved you. Or your money. An hour later, I walked into the offices of Morgan and Black attorneys. Everything about the place felt expensive. Marble floors. Dark wood walls. Quiet voices. A receptionist smiled. Mr. Carter? We've been expecting you. She led me into a private conference room. An older attorney stood and shook my hand. My name is Jonathan Black. I'm sorry for the circumstances that brought you here. He slid a thick leather folder across the table. Everything inside now belongs to you. I opened the file. The first page listed the assets. A downtown office building. 3 apartment complexes. A large investment portfolio. Several dividend-paying stocks. Cash reserves. The total estimated value. $18,742,000. I blinked twice. This has to be a mistake. Jonathan smiled. It isn't. Your grandfather quietly built these investments over decades. He never wanted the family to know. I looked confused. Why keep it secret? Jonathan opened another envelope. Because he knew exactly what would happen. Inside was a handwritten letter. At the top, it read, To my grandson, Ethan. I recognized my grandfather's handwriting immediately. My chest tightened. I began reading. If you're holding this letter, then life has already taught you a lesson money never could. A lump formed in my throat. Your family has always judged people by what they own. I prayed you would never become like them. I paused. Every word felt painfully accurate. Then I reached the final paragraph. If they stand beside you when you have nothing, share everything with them. But if they abandon you, never let guilt convince you they deserve what they refuse to help you build. I slowly folded the letter. For the first time since losing my job, I smiled. Not because I was rich. Because someone had believed in me long before I believed in myself. Jonathan leaned forward. There's one more thing. He handed me a small silver key. What is this? Your grandfather's private safety deposit box. It has remained unopened for 16 years. He instructed us that only you could access it. The next morning, I arrived at First National Bank. The vault manager unlocked the deposit box. Inside, there wasn't gold. There wasn't cash. Instead, there was an old leather notebook, a family photograph, and a sealed envelope marked, Open only after you've read the journal. I opened the journal. The very first page made my heart race. Day 1. I think someone in my own family is stealing from me. My breathing stopped. The journal continued. Page after page. My grandfather had documented suspicious bank transfers, missing money, forged signatures, and one name appeared over and over again. My father. I stared at the name in disbelief. No. That can't be right. Then I turned to the next page. Tucked inside the journal was a faded photograph. It showed my father standing beside a man I'd never seen before, exchanging a thick envelope of cash. On the back, my grandfather had written just 5 chilling words. The betrayal started here. I stared at the photograph. My father's face was unmistakable. He stood beside a stranger, shaking hands. Between them, a thick envelope full of cash. On the back, my grandfather had written, "The betrayal started here." I couldn't breathe. No. There has to be another explanation. I quickly turned the page. My grandfather's handwriting filled every line. If you're reading this, don't judge too quickly. Pictures tell stories, but not always the truth. I frowned. What did that mean? The next few pages revealed something I never expected. The man in the photograph wasn't a criminal. His name was Michael Brooks. He had been my grandfather's personal investigator for nearly 3 years. He secretly tracked millions of dollars disappearing from the family business. And my father had been helping him. I leaned back in my chair. So Dad wasn't stealing. Jonathan Black nodded. No. He was trying to expose the real thief. I flipped another page. There it was. A list of suspicious transactions. Each one approved using forged signatures. The same signature appeared again and again. Not my father's. Not my grandfather's. It belonged to my Uncle David. My heart skipped. Uncle David had always been the successful one. Luxury cars, expensive vacations, designer suits. Everyone admired him, including my parents. Jonathan looked at me. Your grandfather discovered the truth. But before he could report everything, he passed away. I opened the sealed envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from my grandfather. Ethan, if David is still free, it means the wrong people stayed in control. My hands trembled. The letter continued. Your father wanted to expose him, but your mother begged him not to. I looked up. What? Jonathan sighed. Your mother believed exposing David would destroy the family. So she convinced your father to stay silent. The room felt colder. All these years, I thought my father had been weak. The truth was, he had sacrificed everything to keep the family together. And the family rewarded him with betrayal. As I left the attorney's office, my phone suddenly buzzed. It was Ryan, my younger brother. The same brother who laughed while I packed my bags. I almost ignored the call. Instead, I answered. Ethan? His voice sounded different. Nervous. Mom wants to talk. I stayed silent. Then I heard my mother's voice. Soft. Almost trembling. Ethan, we may have been a little hard on you. I closed my eyes. A little? She ignored the question. When are you coming home? I looked at the leather folder sitting on the passenger seat. Less than 24 hours ago. I was homeless. Now, the same people who threw me out wanted me back. I calmly replied, I don't have a home to come back to. Then I ended the call. That evening, Jonathan called again. Ethan, there's something you need to see. What is it? We've just received security footage from your grandfather's old office. It was hidden in a private archive. You're in it. I froze. What? You were only 12 years old. But what happened that day explains everything. The next morning, I sat in the attorney's office. The old security video began to play. A 12-year-old boy, me, walked into Grandpa's office carrying 2 cups of coffee. Then, the camera captured something no one had ever noticed. My Uncle David, opening Grandpa's safe. And my father, walking in. Just seconds later, the security footage began to play. The timestamp read, September 18th to 16th years earlier. The video was grainy, black and white, silent. I watched my 12-year-old self walk into Grandpa's office carrying 2 cups of coffee. I smiled without realizing it. I still remembered that day. Grandpa had promised to teach me how to invest. I never got that lesson. Then, the office door opened. My Uncle David walked inside. He looked around carefully, making sure no one was watching. My heart started racing. He walked directly toward Grandpa's wall safe, pulled a key from his pocket, unlocked it, and removed a thick stack of documents. Jonathan paused the video. Watch carefully. David didn't take money. He didn't take jewelry. He took files. Important files. He quickly replaced them, locked the safe, and turned to leave. Just then, the office door opened again. My father walked in. David froze. For several seconds, neither of them moved. Then my father grabbed David's arm. The 2 men began arguing. There was no audio, but their body language said everything. Dad pointed toward the safe. David shook his head. Dad demanded the documents back. David refused. Then, David shoved my father hard against the desk. The folder fell to the floor. Papers scattered everywhere. The video ended. The room became silent. Jonathan slowly looked at me. Your father wasn't helping David. He caught him. I couldn't believe it. For 16 years, everyone had blamed the wrong man, including me. Jonathan opened another folder. There was one witness. Who? The company janitor. He gave a statement years ago. I read the report. It said, Mr. David Carter left the office carrying several folders. Mr. Richard Carter chased after him, shouting that he was calling the police. My hands started shaking. Then why wasn't David arrested? Jonathan sighed. Because your grandfather suffered a fatal heart attack 2 days later. The investigation ended. The evidence disappeared. And David took control of everything. I leaned back in my chair. Every memory suddenly felt different. Dad hadn't been weak. He had been trapped. He spent years protecting the family, while David quietly destroyed it from the inside. I whispered, I'm sorry, Dad, even though he wasn't there to hear it. Just then, Jonathan received a phone call. He answered. His expression changed instantly. He stood up. Ethan, we have a problem. What happened? He looked directly at me. Someone broke into the bank vault last night. My heart skipped. The safety deposit box? He nodded. They were looking for your grandfather's journal. I quickly reached for my backpack. It isn't there anymore. Jonathan smiled. No. It's with you. Then his smile disappeared. But whoever broke in now knows you have it. As I walked toward my car, A black luxury SUV slowly pulled into the parking lot. The driver's window rolled down. I froze. Behind the wheel sat Uncle David. He smiled as if we were old friends. Then he calmly said, "Get in, Ethan. It's time you finally heard my side of the story." Before I could answer, another black SUV pulled in behind him. Then another. 3 vehicles, all surrounding my car. David smiled again. This time, his smile wasn't friendly. "You can come willingly, or we can do this the hard way." 3 black SUVs surrounded my car. Every exit was blocked. Uncle David stepped out first. Perfect gray suit. Expensive watch. The same confident smile he'd worn my entire life. He adjusted his jacket, then looked straight at me. "Relax, Ethan. If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't have come myself." I didn't move. "What do you want?" He smiled. "The journal." I tightened my grip on my backpack. "I have no idea what you're talking about." He laughed. "You've always been a terrible liar." David slowly walked closer. "You think that journal tells the whole story?" "It doesn't. It tells your grandfather's version." I folded my arms. "Then tell me yours." For the first time, his smile disappeared. "When your grandfather chose your father to run the company, I was already doing most of the work. I built clients. I found investors. But Richard got all the credit." "So you stole from him?" David looked away. "I took what I believed I had earned." I shook my head. "No. You stole from your own family." Before David could answer, police sirens echoed through the parking lot. Detective Maria Lopez stepped out with 6 officers. "Nobody move." David quietly smiled. "You called the police?" I answered calmly. "No. My attorney did." Jonathan Black walked out of the building holding another folder. "Mr. Carter." The court signed the emergency order. David frowned. "What order?" Jonathan handed the documents to Detective Lopez. "The court has frozen every company connected to David Carter. His bank accounts, his properties, his investment firms. Everything." David's confident expression vanished. "What?" Detective Lopez stepped forward. "David Carter, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and conspiracy." The officers placed him in handcuffs. He didn't resist. Instead, he looked directly at me. "You think you've won?" I stayed silent. He laughed bitterly. "You haven't even met the person who planned all of this." My stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" David leaned closer. "I wasn't the mastermind. I was the employee." The parking lot became silent. Detective Lopez frowned. "Who hired you?" David smiled. "You'll find out soon enough." As the police car drove away, Jonathan slowly exhaled. I was hoping he'd never say that. I turned toward him. "You knew?" Jonathan nodded. "I suspected. But I never had proof." "Proof of what?" He looked me in the eyes. "Your grandfather wasn't investigating one thief. He was investigating an entire network." The next morning, news of David's arrest spread across Chicago. Television crews gathered outside the courthouse. Reporters called non-stop. But none of that mattered. I was sitting alone in my grandfather's old study, reading the final pages of his journal. Then, a folded piece of paper slipped out from the back cover. It wasn't part of the journal. It was hidden inside the binding. Across the top, my grandfather had written, If David is arrested, read this immediately. I unfolded the page. The first sentence made my heart stop. Ethan. The person who betrayed our family isn't a Carter. I turned the page. There was only one name. One name I'd never heard before. Victoria Hale. Underneath it, Grandpa had written one final warning. Never let her know you inherited the trust. At that exact moment, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed a name that made my blood run cold. Victoria Hale. My phone kept ringing. Victoria Hale. The same name my grandfather had written only seconds earlier. I looked at Jonathan. He slowly nodded. Answer it. I put the call on speaker. A calm woman's voice filled the room. Hello, Ethan. Congratulations on finding your grandfather's journal. My heart skipped. Who are you? She laughed softly. Someone your grandfather could never stop. I kept my voice steady. What do you want? There was a brief silence. Then she answered. To make you an offer. Meet me. Alone. No police. No attorney. And I'll tell you where every missing dollar went. Jonathan immediately shook his head. It's a trap. Detective Lopez, who had just arrived, agreed. We can track the call. I looked at both of them. No. My grandfather spent 20 years chasing the truth. I'm ending it today. An hour later, I arrived at an abandoned train station on Chicago's South Side. The place was empty. Except for one woman. Elegant black suit. Silver hair. Calm blue eyes. She looked more like a CEO than a criminal. You must be Victoria. She smiled. And you must be William Carter's favorite grandson. She handed me a thin folder. I promised you the truth. Inside were offshore account statements, property records, wire transfers, everything. Every dollar stolen from my grandfather's company. Every shell corporation. Every fake signature. Then I reached the final page. My breathing stopped. Every stolen asset had already been returned. What? Victoria nodded. 3 years ago. I looked at her in disbelief. If the money was returned, why did all this happen? She looked away. Because revenge became more valuable than money. She took a deep breath. Your Uncle David couldn't accept losing. So even after the money was recovered, he kept lying. He kept manipulating your family. He wanted control. He wanted respect. And eventually, he believed his own lies. I slowly closed the folder. So all of this destroyed our family for nothing? Victoria quietly nodded. For pride. Just then, police cars surrounded the station. Detective Lopez stepped forward. Victoria Hale. You're under arrest. Victoria didn't run. She simply smiled. I've been waiting for this. She placed both hands behind her back. Before the officers led her away, she turned toward me one last time. Your grandfather was a better man than all of us. Don't waste your life chasing revenge the way we did. Then she was gone. 6 months later, the investigation officially ended. Every false accusation against my father was erased. My grandfather's company was restored. The stolen properties were sold. The recovered money was returned to the victims. For the first time in years, the Carter name meant honesty again. One quiet Sunday afternoon, someone knocked on my office door. It was my mother. She looked older. Tired. She held a small cardboard box. I found these while cleaning the attic. Inside, were my childhood trophies. My graduation photo. Old birthday cards. Everything I'd thought had been thrown away. Tears filled her eyes. Ethan, I judged your paycheck when I should have been protecting my son. I don't expect forgiveness. I only wanted you to know I was wrong. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then I stood up and hugged her. Not because the past didn't matter, but because I refused to let it control the rest of my life. A few weeks later, Ryan came to see me. He looked nothing like the arrogant brother who had laughed when I lost my job. He looked embarrassed. I owe you an apology. I smiled. You do. He nodded. I thought success made someone valuable. I was wrong. Instead of giving him money, I offered him a job. An entry-level position. No special treatment. No family shortcuts. You'll earn everything. He smiled. For the first time in years. 1 year later, the office building my grandfather left me had become the headquarters of a new investment company. Above the entrance, a bronze plaque displayed the words that changed my life. Character is worth more than wealth. Every new employee stopped to read it. Because that sentence wasn't just our motto. It was our promise. Sometimes people ask me, what was the best part about becoming a millionaire? They're always surprised by my answer. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the buildings. It wasn't the success. The best part was discovering who stayed beside me when they believed I had nothing. The family who threw me out lost far more than a son. They lost the chance to stand beside me when it mattered most. And me? I didn't get the last laugh because I became rich. I got the last laugh because I built a life that no one's opinion could ever take away. The end.